I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, but Andrew Kuo will not take a day off, not even while the New York Knickerbockers are enmeshed in a feisty, heated, hostile first-round series with the dreaded fifth seed. You're here.
Man, I just got off the D train, which is a really, blue-collar train from the Garden. Been there all night celebrating with my Italian-American Knicks fan friends, and got my lunch pail with me. My coffee thermos is empty. It was a long night's work, Ben. The grind, as they say.
You are a true ham and egger, a true New Yorker out there with your letting those Tim boots stomp.
Listen, I don't order my egg and cheese with sliced bread, man. It's called a roll with maybe some poppy seeds to avoid those bodega cops. Get off my back.
Only in New York.
Dave, what's the Knicks slogan these days? Like we family or something, or or fam?
It's like we fam, we here, we are tied 1-1. We spit on Trae Young. Yeah, I think it just becomes bars after some period of time. Like you read 6 of them, and all of a sudden you realize you've just been in a cipher.
Yeah, whoever came up with this, like maybe 8-9 months ago, was like, the branding of WeWork was really excellent. There's no way that could go south. We'll just put we in front of everything. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
We work. We fam.
We watched the Knicks game 3 times. The third time.
I know you did watch it 3 times, though. You sound as if you're cracking a joke, but you're a 3-time New York. Well, I take that back. Did you watch game 1 3 times or just the victory 3 times?
Twice. So, the full disclosure, I usually watch the games twice if I can. Once at night, and when I wake up, once in the morning, and they shorten it. But today I watched it 3 times because I forgot to turn off MSG, and also it was a very enjoyable game. So I was
Do you even rewatch the games, bro?
Do you even rewatch the games 3 times, bro? It's more perfect every time, sort of like our podcast. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want it more. It's called effort. You should look it up.
You do want it a lot.
I do.
And that's why you watch the game. All right, so here's my question. Sorry. If the Knicks don't win this series,
the championship. Okay.
Sure. A freak accident occurs and the Knicks get eliminated. Will you go back and watch this game again? Like if you watch this 4 times, technically the Knicks will have won the series.
Hey, if it's like a Monday afternoon, I got a steaming bowl of bucatine, I'm looking for something to watch, and I switch on to NBA TV classic games, and it's game 2 of this series, hells yeah, I'm watching it again. What am I, made of stone?
That would technically be 4 Knicks victories, each with a incredible Obi Toppin dunk.
I mean, okay, not to get too wistful here, but that was a great New York City moment last night, wasn't it? I mean, we can get to the nitty-gritty when we get into hoops later, but, it was a cool moment for this town. Or am I just, drinking the Kool-Aid?
You are... I don't know if it's Kool-Aid you're drinking or if you're drinking a nutcracker with your chopped cheese. Whatever it is.
Or
you are sipping that Gotham juice.
And complimentary red stripe at a party in a Nike pop-up space. That's what I'm sipping.
I really do trace most of my New York City history through what beers were free at any given time when I would go out solely based on the prospect of having an free beer.
Rank them.
Like rank the times of my life or the free beers?
No, the beers.
Oh. Well, so let's see. You had the red stripe era for sure. There was
shout out to the Fader.
Yeah, the Cornerstone Marketing supplied us with a lot of frosty. It doesn't warm well, the thing about Red Stripe. It gets warm, and it gets a little syrupy.
It's skunky. The bottle's cool to look at, but not cool to have and beer all night. And it's just like, okay, this is weird. I think like the opening of the bottle is like hard to drink out of.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And
cool.
does that affect the taste? Are we enough of beer connoisseurs to say the shape of a beer container affects like the nose of it?
I mean, Stella tried to do their whole like you have to order Stella in our weird gold goblet, right? And then they gave bars that weird gold goblet, the gold on the rim.
Yeah.
That's the dumbest looking thing. Stella's also horrendous. Stay away from that shit.
Well, bad news. This podcast is sponsored by Stella Artois, or it was.
Oh, the second Stella is bad news. The first one, mwah, and Stella is great news.
No, let's see. What other eras did we have? We had, I want to say it was Bud Select. It was a Bud Select period. I don't know if that still exists, but there was a thing.
God, that seems so recent, but it was probably 10 years ago. There was Bud Select in the black can, and also the tin buds that were given out for a while. You know, like the long tin ones that were especially cold, which was a trick because aluminum conducts coldness and heat. So
I remember exactly what you were talking about. I
Yeah,
don't know if I think they were probably 16 ounces,
Yeah.
but they were shaped kind of like a canister.
Or I thought it was like a bottle, you know, like with a twist top kind of top.
Oh wait, you're right. They were, but they were like a canister. They were like taller. I felt
Yeah.
like, and then it kind of came in at the top with, as you said, like a screw off.
And the marketing behind it was like it gets extra cold. It's like, right, when you touch aluminum that's thicker, it seems colder, but it gets real warm in your hands. I guess a can does the same thing, but it was just thicker aluminum. So it's like Apple, right? It's like our biggest phone yet, our smallest phone yet, and they just like vacillate between the two.
And then there was a Heineken Select or Heineken Premium. There was a Heineken Light. There was a Heineken era in this mix as well. It might have been Heineken Light or an alternative Heineken. It also had a silverish bottle, if I remember correctly.
That's right. And was there? Yeah, I mean that about covers it. What was
Sam Adams Light Tiger beer? I mean, this
Tiger
is a
was
trip
huge.
down memory lane for those of us who were scavenging for free drinks for a decade of our lives.
And every one of these has like a brand attached to it. I feel like Visionaire was throwing like parties for a while. Remember when Visionaire parties were the ones? And I love the Visionaire shop. Like V-Files is awesome. Like they were kind of right on the Hood by Air ghetto gothic kind of a start. But before that was the magazine,
Yep.
where I had my first art show in like 1999, which was crazy. And they did these art books that were kind of special limited edition magazines, and they had big parties surrounding each drop. And those were the parties for years, right?
I remember those parties. I also remember Vice with Colt 45. We were
Oh God, it's
leaning
tough.
in on this
I remember
half irony, half nihilism, half get fucked up on the low, like for cheap. I don't even know what that was, but I was always unhappy when you go in and they'd have these little tiny bottles of Colt 45. They weren't in 40 form. They were probably like 8 ounces or something like that.
In college I enjoyed N beer, and that meant N40, and that was either probably Old English was my favorite, but like I was so. And that's some terrible beer. When you're young, you can drink it. I don't know. Maybe it's not as bad as I think. I haven't had it in years, but malt liquor really packs a punch, man.
I don't know if I would sip malt liquor right now and say that's malt liquor, but maybe I would. It's been a long time since I drank Crazy Horse or St. Ides or...
St. Ides is tough, man. It's very medicinal. And I do like medicinal stuff now, so maybe I'd love it. But when someone told me what ice beer was, I kind of was like, all right. It was like a normal beer, and they brought it below freezing, and they just skimmed off the ice, and what remained was like a potent alcohol-water combination. I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know what I thought ice was. I thought it was just like cool, like the Iceman George Gervin.
You know, bringing that up to today, I don't see people drinking malt liquor anymore. It's got to be in stores. I just don't see it that frequently. But have you noticed the little, I don't know, little boxes, little baskets at counters now that have Fireball? And Fireball is like a cinnamon liqueur, I guess is how you'd describe it. So I was really curious because that
Point
can't
of purchase
be legal.
Fireball?
But
Yeah,
that
how
can't
can-
be legal. So I went and looked at them. And they're being deceptive because everyone thinks of Fireball as this really popular college drink with cinnamon and it's spicy.
Very sorority frat
take it-
kind of vibe.
Yes, you do it in shots. Kind of a modern Goldschlager without the class.
It doesn't taste bad with a beer. I'll go on record, though.
So I looked at the little bottle and it's malt liquor. That's how they're getting away with it.
It's classified as malt liquor?
I don't believe the actual Fireball is, but what they're selling at the counter, which is surely deceiving people into thinking it is the classic Fireball, is in reality malt liquor. And I saw someone buying it, like, holy shit, you can just buy a Fireball? And the guy left, and the guy behind the counter was like, malt liquor.
How small are these bottles? Because you can't get your party on with just like a shot of malt liquor.
I agree. They're the same ones that you would get at a liquor store. That's why it's so deceptive. They're the same size as the little
Like
ones.
the one hitters, right? Like the airline one hitters.
The ones that all the mailmen drink.
The ones that all the Sixers bloggers drink.
The mailman's favorite. That's why they're always littering the grounds outside of postal offices.
Oh, weird. Like, how strong can malt liquor be? I'm sure we can Google this, but like,
I would guess it can get up to like 8% or something like that, because you can sell.
Oh, beers get way past 8.
Maybe so. I don't know what the designation is where it becomes like the content of wine. I don't think you can sell an beer in a bodega that is like 25% alcohol. I think that there's got to be a limit. That maybe it's 10% or something.
It's for cooking. Like in the bodegas have like kind of affordable pop-up little displays of white and red wine.
But again, those are wine products.
Right.
It's not actually wine. See, the bodegas, that's how they get you. You're like, time to get myself a Fireball and a bottle of wine, have myself a great time. And you've just gotten yourself malt liquor and a wine product.
Well, that gives you license to have more than N wine because you're not drinking wine. Glug, glug. Chug-a-lug, my friend.
Throw it back, lads.
COVID's over.
You know what else is in the news cycle a lot because I decided it would be? Mortadella, or mortadelle, as most people call it.
I know. That sentence dragged on for so long that you lost me at mortadelle. But thankfully, you rephrased it for our listening pleasure.
Fell asleep when you hit me with that A at the end. Like for the sake of brevity, like we have a podcast to do. Oh, mortadelle, yes. That's the luncheon meat I'm referring to. Let me not bore you with all the details.
So what's up with mortadelle, dude?
Well, I thought that mortadelle was having a moment, and one of the smaller tragedies of COVID has been, I think, sandbagging the rise of mortadelle as one of the more prominent of the sliced meats.
Well, I'm with you on the rise of mortadelle because it was like it became kind of like a crossover thing, like chopped cheese. I hate to say that on the radio. I don't want to bring up any controversy or trigger anyone, but like fancy people started getting into mortadelle, right? And you had a lot of like nice local artisanal meat shops making their own mortadelle. Original mortadelle was kind of a thing. I even went to Bologna, not for the mortadelle. And when I was in Bologna, not too long ago, 7-8 years ago, they were like, have you had this delicious thing we make in our town? And it was mortadelle. I was like, yes, sir. I have sampled this.
That's well before the rise of mortadella. Like, if you want to hipster this out, and say you brought mortadella back 7 years ago, I'm not going to stop you. I will.
Wait,
I will sit here and nod
rise.
my head and say yes, you did. You brought mortadella to New York City, home of the Italian Godfather hero.
I would say, in a vacuum, the rise of mortadella coincided with the rise of Witch House. Is that way too long ago?
Oh.
We're talking a decade.
I mean, I understand why they would be mentally linked to you.
15 years. Yeah.
Witch House
I
and
enjoy
mortadella.
both. Yeah. Sitting alone in the food court, sampling mortadella, listening to Salem.
As Salem and White Ring are playing in your headphones.
Getting my vibe on, wearing my Knicks tee. My Mitchell Robinson Knicks tee.
See, I would say that the rise of mortadella may have been because of those little sandwiches at Frenchette.
Oh, come on. You're getting way too granular here. That's the rise of mortadella?
I feel like
Frenchette?
that was part of it.
Okay,
now personally, my love of mortadella is
You're mortadella day one.
lifelong. My mother took me from the womb and wrapped me in a daintily cut swaddle of mortadella right out the bat. A literal mortadella day one.
Mm-hmm. What if
I was born in mortadella.
What if Finals legend Matthew Dellavedova came out in like mascara and like white face paint and was like, "My new nickname is Mortadella"?
Is it because he'd be doing Witch House?
It would be like it would be death upon his opponent. He'd send you to an early grave shooting threes with this tough defense. Anyway,
do you not like mortadella? Or
do I not like it?
Sounds like you don't like it.
Oh, I love mortadella. I mean, with the caveat of trying to eat less lunch meats, I have no problems with like bologna in anything. I very much enjoy a sandwich, especially an Italian sandwich. And mortadella is kind of like a really nice addition to the medley. But
if we're talking Italian sandwiches right here, the Godfather, in my opinion, it always includes mortadella, right?
I believe so. I mean, I'm not.
You got your
no
salami.
Italian sandwich historian here.
You got your salami. You got your ham.
Your cotto salami. Your ham. I don't know. Genoa.
Like
yeah,
multiple, you're saying multiple salamis? I think you're talking about the three kings of the Italian hero.
Gabagool 1, Gabagool 2, and Gabagool 3.
Tres gabagooles.
I'll have how you say one of those tres gabagooles.
Oh, the three kings who found Jesus in the manger and each brought a different tube of mortadella. Yes.
French Ed, get out of here. So our listeners who don't know, French Ed is a wonderful Christmas restaurant down in Tribeca that does a fantastic job, that has thankfully survived COVID and has a great new bakery that is a buzz. You're the third person to mention their bakery to me in the last 2 weeks, so it's hot.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you are sort of the filtration process for this. If you're getting word of it from Tres Gabagooles, then it must be true.
I'm the Tres Gabagooles messenger.
That's why New York hates Trey Young. It's appropriation of Tres Gabagooles.
Listen, buddy. Atlanta's got nothing on our Gabagool number 4s. It's where we keep our extraneous Gabagooles that we don't want to tell our original Gabagooles.
All I'm saying is I think it's high time that mortadella got its momentum back, and that starts here. That starts today. The tragedy of COVID and its adverse impact on Tres Gabagooles, it's over. It's a new day. We declared COVID dead months ago, and now it's time to heal.
Do you think it's because gabagooles and mortadella are something that are kind of frivolous and are kind of like point of purchase things, being like, I didn't go out looking for a mortadella delicacy, but since I'm here, I will definitely have one. So when you're like planning a shopping list, you don't ever write down mortadella. It's probably like Black Forest ham or like honey roast turkey, right?
Do you get that granular? with your hams?
I do. Okay, let's rock this. I haven't had ham in a while, but I did purchase some ham to have nice sandwiches because I've been craving just like, I don't know, foods I ate when I was a kid. I think honey ham is trash. I'm a Black Forest homie. Fight me.
I don't think I can tell the difference between any of them.
You could.
I think
if I showed
all
you,
the hams are the same.
No way, man. Get out of here. If I showed you these hams, you'd be like, one is not the same as the other.
Look, my hunch is that whenever you say a variety of ham, they're just cutting it off the same one boar's head. Oh, honey mustard, absolutely same one. Oh yes, give me the what's the one, the Black Forest one? All come from the same log of ham.
Well, not everyone's ham palate is created equal, and I'm not about to shame your skill set here. All I'm gonna say is no fool would mistake honey ham as Black Forest.
I'm saying there's one ham, and it's kind of like how the Eskimos describe snow.
Right. It's like indigenous tribes would be like, there is no color blue. It's just the sky.
Just ham, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't ban the ham, man.
Well,
it's a good point. Good point. Point taken with your mortadella. I am going to investigate more and report back on the next perfect pod.
Yeah, we're gonna be pushing this agenda for a while, so get fucking used to it. All right. So there's a recent scandal's the wrong word, just jibber jabber on Twitter. When Andrew Yang, we're not going to argue mayoral candidates right now. There's plenty of time for that. Mm-hmm. When he was asked a question on Ziwei? Is that how you pronounce her name?
Oh yeah, that new comedian show on Showtime, I believe.
Right, and
or Stars, or something.
And she asked him what his favorite subway station was, and people, I guess, performatively got annoyed, angry,
up in
scornful,
their takes,
whatever, about his choice of Times Square.
We pretended like we cared.
That's a weird question.
It is a waste of a question for a mayoral candidate, and I don't want to talk about him, but yeah, you're right. You have a mayoral candidate. If you want to be funny, I love what Deezus and Mero do. Shout out to friends of the pod. And when they have politicians on, it's very funny and kind of well written. Very well written. But don't ask, hey, I have the Ben Dietrich from Cookies Hoops on. Ben, what is your favorite color? Oh, what is your favorite ham? Right? You don't want to waste a question on that.
The universal ham, obviously.
There's one ham.
One ham to rule them all.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm a monodeist when it comes to ham. Yes, I said it. Mm-hmm. But that question, it was effective in that people talked about it and people debated it, and it was trending and it got in the news cycle. So effective question. Mm-hmm. But it was also just an odd one because who likes any subway stops?
We brought this up the other night, and it turns out we all have our subway stop takes. I was like, well, Delancey is trash. I really want to check out the Chuck Close paintings in the 7, the new 7 station on the west side. My favorite would probably be the Milton Glaser St. Mark's, but only because I have childhood memories of being at St. Mark's Place buying Smashing Pumpkins teas.
Right. I mean, I think the sculptures, the murals, I think those would be the elements that someone would say, that's why I prefer this train stop. Or I could say Grand Central. It's grandeur and it's centrality.
That doesn't count. Grand Central is
no, that's a
castle.
Train stop.
The train stop, but Grand Central is not. I don't consider the 6 platform Grand Central.
No,
Grand Central is a hub.
No, me neither. I agree.
Yeah.
100%. That's not a subway stop.
Right. The platform, the zone you exit to get to Grand Central is the stop.
Honestly, my favorite ones are where you've been riding underground the whole time and then it emerges into the light.
Oh, you mean
the
the
elevator.
JM or something?
And all these trains do it when they get, or not all of them, but most of them do it when they get outside of sort of the central loci of Manhattan and the parts of Brooklyn that are closest. Queens, it goes up in there right away. I think those are great. You're coming out and all of a sudden you're outside. I think it's awesome.
It's cool. It's such an era of modern planning that has been discussed everywhere. But when you're riding, it's nice to be elevated when it's like sunny out. It's very cool. Even when it's like nighttime, you see all the lights. But it's a travesty of urban planning, right?
Oh, it's brutal. I think it was a photo of Kansas City, or it was rather two photos of Kansas City that compared what it looked like in their downtown 150 years ago to what it looks like now. And the poster had circled the same building on two different photos. And one was this kind of suburban sprawl with nothing there. And that was the modern one. And the one from 100 some years ago was a thriving downtown, with opera houses and hotels, and just looked like where you'd want to be. It looked incredible. And to your point about the urban planning that we always hear about that happened, in New York City with the highways and with the trains, and that gets discussed a lot. But I think we view these cities like, I don't know whether it's Oklahoma City, which I think a lot of it burned down, or Kansas City, or even Rochester, that they had very distinct downtowns and walkable spaces in the same way that we view, the East Coast tradition. And they just blew through them with freeways and destroyed their cities.
Yeah, there was some sort of like industrial movement. I wish I knew more about this, but like, even when you see pictures of Williamsburg, like at the turn of the century, it was as busy as downtown New York. And I don't know what happens with urban planning to kind of shepherd our living environments to visions of certain people or city planners, some to success, and in New York City famously to its detriment. And I feel like the people who have created neighborhoods like deserve all the credit. But it's like they put housing in the wrong places, they put highways in the wrong places. And, with all this talk of infrastructure, I'm just like, I hope there's an expert here, because if we do this wrong, it's just going to it's not conducive to like an enjoyable life.
I mean, we know a lot of the motivations for those highways that just ripped through existing neighborhoods in the past.
Yeah.
It was that you had people moving out to the suburbs and still worked in the city. So they went out and had their house, and they just wanted the convenience of whipping their way in and then back to the burbs. And naturally, it being America, they ripped through neighborhoods that didn't have political power or money. Yeah. And they went through like black neighborhoods, Latino neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, and basically made them disappear. And, I guess the conspiracy side of that would say that was also part of the plan to basically evaporate neighborhoods.
The narrative is there to be taken. There's a lot of people who question why America doesn't have like speed trains, because it could definitely alter the shape of America for good. But then there will always be people who, and there will always be people who are kind of right in saying like, every time we make a development like this, we should observe who suffers and who gains, and before we do this, we have to take care of the people that we have to kind of move aside. And I'm glad I'm not a politician, man, because I don't see any answer to this, because Metro North is a really cool thing, because people can, live upstate and take the train to New York City with general ease, but at a cost. And I don't really, it's hard to find the sweet spot, because one person who gets displaced is too many, right?
Well, it also comes down to what is the actual benefit if people get to move out and live in Connecticut and then work in the city. Who does that actually benefit? Does that benefit New York City? Because now they don't even live in the state. They don't even live here. They're just taking the train in and taking a job away from someone who could live here. It's conceivable.
Yeah, it's sticky territory. It depends on like what industry, what are we talking about, but one could also say like it promotes industry in commerce in New York City if people have the option to not live here because a lot of people don't want this New York City smoke. It's tough to live here. Like one of my friends' power went out and she was just like, why do I even live here? What is the point? I pay so much for my single bedroom apartment and I'm sitting here in the dark. And I'm like,
there's the Metro North.
well, I'm like, walk 5 minutes in any direction tonight and you'll run into one of the most famous restaurants in the world. This is the Lower East Side. And, or I'm like, go into a gallery and realize like you're one of 3 cities that has a gallery scene. And she's like, oh yeah, this place rules. I'm like, I think it does, man. I love it, but I know what she means. It's like, this has been a hard 10 years, man.
Well, one place that I think people could consider moving is a small place outside of Philadelphia.
Easttown down. Yeah.
Some people call it Pound Town. We call it Pound Town. Other people call it Easttown.
Yeah.
And they've got a mayor. Mm-hmm. And she's out there being a terrible cop and solving crimes.
I have to like revise my top 10 suspects of the show. No spoilers, so like if you haven't seen the last episode, the prequel to the finale, we're about to spoil some shit.
Okay, yes. This is your official tishel. Spoiler warning.
Yes. All right, let's get into this. Who did the murder stuff? Okay,
so before we go any further, I want to say my pick for the hero is not going to be the hero. I thought Freddie, the guy who died of an overdose last episode, I thought he had a handgun. I thought he had a redemption narrative, and he was going to come flying back in the last second and save Mare from a certain death, and Freddie was going to be the hero. Unfortunately, his corpse says otherwise.
Well, according to HBO rules and Game of Thrones, he could come back to life. Maybe this turns into fantasy at the last.
Freddie's dead.
Yeah, Freddie's alive.
So Freddie is out as my hero candidate, but my killer candidate, it seems clear that this Billy character, who I never really know what he was up to, but he's just part of this family, and then I believe John is the other one.
Can you say who are they in relation to Mare?
I don't even know what their relation is to Mare. I gotta be honest. I don't like the suspect pool.
I mean, okay. Obviously, the gun in the tackle box is meaningful. Unfortunately, I watched the preview of the season finale. They have a little...
Okay, easy.
Okay. There's a shot of Mare walking through the woods with cops behind her, so I don't think she gets killed by that gun. So at the end of the prequel to the finale, she's walking into imminent danger. Judging by the snippet of the finale, she survives this danger. But was the gun in the tackle box supposed to be for someone else?
Well, I think we've been led to believe that the killer is one of the 2 men in the woods.
Is it misdirection?
I think it has to be, because at this point they've said it's Billy, and they've done that for like virtually a whole episode. They even hinted at him when he left the room awkwardly and left Ann Beer sitting there undrank on the table, which is a crime in Pound Town. Don't
write off the annoying kind of show where it's like Occam's razor, right? The most likely suspect is the suspect.
That could still happen, but it's too much direction towards this one guy. So the natural inclination would just say, well, the other person who's around him is his brother, and his brother's got to be the guy who did it. So it's one of those 2 guys, and as you said, Mare is walking towards certain danger with the 2 people.
Photo. What's on this photo?
Right, with the 2 people who are now either the suspect and someone who might get killed, or vice versa, and Mare is entering into this trilogy of deception and murder. Mm-hmm. But perhaps it's not one of them at all.
I mean, I think after watching Mare's daughter listen to some Phoebe Bridgers and have kind of like a psychotic episode, albeit she had N beer, maybe a little malt liquor from a bodega, Who knows?
And edible.
Yeah. I was just like, yo, what if she was kind of behind this? Because I could see some shenanigans playing out there. She seems restless in a spiritual way.
Oh, she was one of the last people to see her alive.
She is bringing up history with Mare and be like, it should have been you who committed suicide and not my brother. And maybe this psychotic break has been with her the whole time.
And to your point, there were rumors that Mare's son was the one who fathered her child. And the daughter is working on a hard-hitting doc about her brother right now.
Yep. And there's this photo that was rescued from the great book burning that, Cookies Hoops supports burning all books, even their handwritten diaries. And this photo, you think it's a printout of Ben Simmons' basketball reference page, and the head cop is like, "Stop, Mare, Ben Simmons is elite." But we don't know until the final episode.
I like the idea that the photo is of Mare's daughter and her, but that also wouldn't really be incriminating.
What is in this photo? Unless it's like a dead body, and then who developed this film?
Well, I'm presuming it is a photo of the dead girl and someone in a compromising position. And I don't mean that like they're literally having sex, but enough that's showing their intimacy and friendship.
Like a father kissing the child or something. Is that enough? What could be on this photo to be that instantly incriminating?
Right, if it's just a photo of Mare's daughter and the dead girl, like, oh my God, they were classmates. She literally comforted her after she got her ass beat.
It wasn't Ben Simmons' steal percentage. Maybe it was like Guy Pearce IMDb page where he's the dastardly dude in every single movie he's in.
I mean, it definitely could be Guy Pearce.
Even in LA Confidential, where he's like quote unquote the hero, he's kind of the worst. He's the worst in every movie.
But would the police chief say, "Get Mare on the phone right now," if it was the author? No, right?
He wouldn't know. Yeah, he wouldn't have seen Aliens #7. Right.
So he doesn't know that guy's always in movies to be villains, and he doesn't know that he and Mare shagged.
What if it just was like a sequel to Memento, and Guy Pearce is the same character? He takes off his shirt and he's covered in tattoos.
And it just says, "Killed the girl."
Like, don't trust the guy from The Matrix.
Shot her finger off. Yeah, get that tattooed.
Who is the most 90s ass actor you can think of? I thought it was Steve Zahn, but it might be the guy from The Matrix who was in Memento. Joey Pantaleone.
I mean, he was also in The Sopranos, so that...
Oh.
I mean, that fits your... that's early 2000s swagger, though.
Yeah, but he was like, maybe that was the end of his championship run. The Matrix.
As Ralphie Cifaretta?
Yeah.
Or Ralphie Cifarette? He
could tell the difference between hams, let me tell you, man.
Oh, he's one of the Tres Gabagooles.
One of the three Tres Gabagooles. Stay tuned for the reveal of the other two. There's two other Gabagooles. Rank them.
I do like your idea that Mare's daughter is a suspect because she's got to have some role in this show.
Yeah, and she's a very complex character. Yeah. What would be the most annoying thing? I think it would be Mare has a split personality. Or it's
busy
one of the
friend, as she's called, or the angry teen.
I would get really annoyed if one of the brothers fishing was actually the murderer, and the last episode was like a gunfight. That would annoy me.
That is my biggest problem with these two suspects is that I don't know about them and I don't care about them. I didn't even know their names until the end of the last episode. I'm like, these guys, the guy with the beard and then the schmuck who doesn't drink his beers?
Yeah.
Like, those are our suspects? So I don't believe it.
Easy. He's not a schmuck. He is someone who had N beer, so when offered his second beer, he's like, I would have to abstain. I've had N beer.
They're too anonymous for this. So I think it could be the freckle-faced wife.
Oh, that Law and Order homie? Yeah, she's great. It's sort of the Law and Order principle. Why would you have a great actor like her in this show if she's not the damn murder person?
But they've done a good job including enough, so we don't just immediately know that it's Memento Man.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point because she's at first telling her homie that we should keep this from Mare. No one tell Mare. And then Mare shows up and she's snitching on Mare. Like, sort of like NBA Twitter. Just like, this fan did this. My guy did some murder stuff. Like,
Someone's wearing a bootleg cookie shirt.
Yeah. Someone is wearing a cookies graphic on an item we did not produce. And I just think that she's up to something. Which could be her hot. You know what? What if everyone did the murder? What if this was like Eyes Wide Shut and they have like a whole community of murder people?
It's a lot like Shirley Jackson's short story, The Lottery. The whole town got together and stoned the young mother to death.
It's sort of like a continuation of the Nicolas Cage classic, The Wicker Man, which was not a remake, which was the original, where a bunch of people were all the murder people except our protagonist. And then they burned him alive in a weird Tupac video sculpture. Burning Man.
So we're in agreement. It's the Tupac sculpture Burning Man is our main suspect?
Yeah, man. It is. Since Burning Man was canceled this year, they had to keep the vibe alive through prestige HBO murder stuff.
Well, I'm going to go with Freckleface, and you've got the daughter. I think these are strong bids.
These are very strong bids, and if it is one of the brothers, we could just charge it to the game.
I'm with it. And thus, the spoiler alert ends.
Welcome back to Cookies, the most influential basketball podcast.
So, spoiler alert. Here are the other dose gabagooles.
Introducing number 2 of the Dos Gabagooles. You'll be
are you listening to any good tunes these days?
Man, a little, not so much. I'm still stuck in my like singer-songwriter stuff. The Olivia Rodrigo album is kind of cool. It didn't really get me like Driver's License did, but Driver's License is on the record with a little like twist in production. But I might be too old for her concerns. Once I was not too old for her concerns, but now I just care about the Knicks, and she doesn't sing about someone spitting on Trae Young.
That's screwed up.
Yeah. How about you? What are you listening to?
I saw Twitter love that album. I have not listened to it. It's good.
It's pretty good.
It's like pretty standard pop, right? Like emotive pop.
I don't think it's standard at all. Or
I don't
in
know.
both ways. She's interesting where her origin story is kind of manufactured, but her songs are really great. I think people like pop teams are just like churning out some really classic stuff in the last 20 years. So I love teams working on perfect pop songs. The artwork is cool. The subject matter is like more personal than ever. They can manipulate this really well. I think it's cool to say you love the record. I wish I did. I think it's really good, but it's not like a Phoebe Bridgers thing where I just have it on repeat nonstop. Are we not evolving enough? Is context like the thing that's evolving, and are jams not the thing that's evolving? Do you know what I mean? Like
as in, has innovation stalled out, or are we just not looking to innovate?
I think innovation has certainly not stalled out, but we're talking about more of how things are created and how they're received into our ears, as opposed to the thing itself, right? Because sometimes I think Olivia Rodrigo is like 8th generation emo. Maybe I'm just stuck in the era of drum and bass, vocoding, like weirdo artists. I thought Outkast and Quavo and Migos, they were onto something really special, and I don't know if they were just the special ones.
I mean, we'll talk about basketball a little later, But it is hard to know who is influential, who is introducing something new, and who is just extraordinary at something we already understood had value. And, not to relitigate Steph Curry discussions, but I've definitely been at odds with people over my opinion that he's just the best shooter of all time, that he is not highly influential and did not push the game to shift towards threes. He just happened to be the face of it because he is the best shooter who's ever graced the earth. But it was happening either way.
Yeah, and just a quick aside to that amazing conversation. Yeah, the opposite, which I don't necessarily believe in, but it's 50-50, being like his influence is not someone who looks like him. His influence is not Trae Young. His influence is the volume of threes and the type of gravity teams kind of hunt now. But, I love conversations about Steph Curry because he's fucking awesome.
And it's not even as binary as we made it sound. Like, these things run together. And obviously that happens in music too. I've been listening to the Mach-Hommy album. And he is a rapper from Newark who put out an album called Pray for Haiti. It was produced by West Side Gun from the Griselda Collective, who just churns out product on seemingly a weekly basis, a daily, hourly. The new Griselda album, it's out. New one, just dropped 10 seconds ago.
I love that Lil B stuff, Guided by Voices. Yeah, just like a volume of work.
It's outrageous how much material they put out.
I love it.
But I thought this album was pretty cool. I know it can fall into the category of like backpack rap or New York underground rap, but I found it to be, or throwback rap. Like, I understand why it could be classified in these ways that would make it feel like late 90s, early 2000s. But at the same time, kind of to our prior conversation, unless you sound like contemporary music, then how do you avoid that? Like, do you have to always be innovating, or is anything that kind of has the value system of the past always going to feel as if it's being overly influenced by that era?
Yeah, I don't know. Mach-Hommy is certainly not for me, but no kink shaming. Like, I was very involved in the multiple eras he's referencing, and I love MF Doom. I love 90s backpack rap, obviously. I'm selling all my records this weekend. We can talk about it later. If you want a Mike Zoot 12-inch, give me a call. But I think, like,
Quo's unloading the Fondlem Records 12-inch collection.
Natural Elements, here we go. But I think Porn Theater Ushers. I think, like, it's an interesting conversation, right? Because Mach-Hommy, if Lil B, his influence was not necessarily his music. His music was awesome, but the way he made his music and the way he delivered it. And then Odd Future kind of picked up on that, and Odd Future influences Earl Sweatshirt, influences so many other rappers. And then in New York City, I think the last innovative wave, if other than Pop Smoke, which is, kind of influenced by English stuff, is like the ASAP crew and Ghetto Gothic. I mean, you always talk about that. Like, we knew Ghetto Gothic was cool at the time, but it produced, like, its ripple effects were really awesome. To hear the Mach-Hommy record, New Jersey adjacent New York stuff, like, okay, if I do miss my youth, so I like to hear stuff that reminds me of it, but, like, it makes me feel a little, like, stuck and kind of, like, depressed when all we're doing is, like, it at Guitar Center, like, learning classic solos.
Yeah, it's weird. I think my opinion on it has changed a little bit in that in the past when I've wanted to hear that sound, that sonic, like, blueprint of 90s rap, I've just gone back and listened to it. I'm like, well, they did it then, and they did it really well, and we've got these classics that we know and like. So why would things that are, intentionally based on capturing that same feeling be that interesting? And in some ways, I just kind of got sick of the original records from hearing them too much and from being over it and hearing guys
All natural. Yeah.
make stuff that's kind of in the same vein, but with like updated cadences, updated punchlines, like Griselda does and Mach-Hommy does. I just started kind of digging it over the last year and a half or so.
In my other life in painting, that's all it takes, right? Jasper Johns, take something, do something to it, do something to that. And that's all Mach-Hommy and the Griselda crew is doing. And that's enough. Like, there shouldn't be a bigger expectation than that. And that doesn't have to take the form of the actual music. It could take the form of the delivery system, the context, right? And that's as strong as anything. It doesn't hit my ears in the same way. And, like, you know, I'm trying to still figure out Lil Baby a little bit. Like, I love his jam so much, but I'm not really sure, like, where he falls, what he cares about, all this stuff. Is he an activist? Is he, like, mischievous? I can't tell. But
why did he go to the NBA All-Star game and participate in a basketball tournament 2-on-2 in front of a wide national audience when it's clear he can't play basketball? Why would he do that?
I don't know. Like, he is in the middle of everything.
Honestly, crazy.
Like, he doesn't care about street cred, right? Because, like, he kind of clowned himself with some of those shots, like, went viral. No one really cares because everyone loves his music. He was with, like, George Floyd's family, like, a few days ago on the anniversary of George Floyd's murder. And, like, he's just in the mix, kind of. And that's all, you know, he's kind of a great celebrity that way. But to your point, I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out what his angle is a lot of times. And even in his music, it's like, my friend, you know, I'm stealing these lines from my friend, but he's just like, just dissecting his lyrics, I'm not sure what he really cares about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan. We love Lil Baby, and we liked his albums the last few years. I think we declared them the Cookies Hoops Album of the Year.
Stand by it.
Maybe he sort of fell off.
I mean, it's hard to maintain excellence for anybody. Shout out to groups that do, like Outkast. But yeah, to maintain this level, like GQ ran a cover story on A$AP Rocky, and when Yams died, in the article, he was just like, I lost my musical touch, kind of, and I had to look around, maybe even bigger, to see how I could, like, contribute to this scene, you know? It's kind of interesting. To maintain that level of excellence is kind of crazy.
Did you read the GQ profile on Johnny Knoxville?
No, I saw the pictures that looked great, but what did it reveal?
I thought, I mean, there was some fun stuff in there about how he'd been dyeing his hair for years because he knew that his hair was going to all go white because his father's hair went white at 19.
Oh,
So even while Jackass was happening, he was dyeing his hair. So he just let it rock after his wife shaved it off during the pandemic.
yeah.
And it's just like, I mean, look, I've got enough gray hairs, but it definitely aged him like 30 years.
Yeah, man.
No disrespect. I mean, he looks fine. He looks good.
Yeah.
But it just didn't look like the same person that we've seen around for ages.
It brought up a bigger question I have, which we kind of touched on last week's Perfect Pod with Jonah Weiner, a.k.a. Blackbird Spy Plane. When is the right time to give up drip? And what does giving up drip look like? Because Johnny Knoxville, those photos look great. They styled him as GQ does perfectly, impeccably. But he looked kind of like, how do you do, fellow kids, right? And just because of his hair. And he looks like his age. When is it time to give up the drip aspiration? Is there a time?
Well, I feel like for people of any age, your answer should always be Cookies Hoops merch. But
that's timeless.
The authentic article, not a shoddy reprint in a short sleeve version that was never even on sale from the Cookies Hoops site, and we would never ever vouch for its quality, even if it wasn't a stolen design.
Mm-hmm. Respect to the bootleggers out there, man. Bootleg everything. We take it as a sign of respect. It's awesome.
But we know what happened when they were wearing that bootleg shirt.
Snitching.
They got caught up in snitching.
Some D'Angelo Russell shenanigans, as they say.
Didn't see anyone in an authentic Cookies long sleeve shirt snitching.
No one snitches in an authentic Cookies drip. Come on.
But yeah, the Johnny Knoxville interview was quite interesting because he was talking about not only all the injuries that he suffered, like a broken urethra, just wild shit. He had catheters lying around his house from a motorcycle accident where he just tried to flip a motorcycle and he had never done it before.
Yeah.
But there's just an array of these injuries that he's had for years, and I was talking about him basically saying, we're going to do this again. We're going to go out there as a bunch of older dudes.
Yeah.
Now with gray hairs. And we're going to do juvenile stunts, and we're making another Jackass movie.
Number 4, right?
I believe that's right. I'm not entirely sure. Again, just shout out to GQ. It is a good article, and I always liked Johnny Knoxville. I think everyone has. And it was kind of interesting and a bit sad to hear about some of the consequences of him bringing us that joy.
Man, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to see.
Oh, you might like a little whist.
Yeah, it's crazy to see your heroes get old, especially athletes like him. And like, I always think of Tony Hawk, who still got it, man. And he's just like one of one, right? Usually you don't survive that long. And the fact that Johnny Knoxville is still alive. Original Jackass is just insane. I remember when I saw that for the first time, when I saw South Park for the first time, it was like I could not believe how funny these things were, man. Jackass, hugely influential. Big Brother magazine.
Yeah, and I think not to put words in their mouth, but I think the writer described them as like shockingly brave or some phrase of that kind. And that's exactly what it was. You just could not believe that this was happening.
Amazing senses of humor. I don't like when he gets dressed up in old man like makeup and walks around. And ironically, he's not too far from that era, and neither is anyone else. But it walked.
Are you just roasting Uncle Drew right now?
It walked a fine line of mockery and just like pure hilariousness, which is like a Jerky Boys thing. But I always sided with the hilariousness of it.
Yeah, they were great. Maybe we can talk about a little basketball here. We got the NBA playoffs are underway. Most teams have... Actually, I take that back. Everyone's played at least 2 games. As of right now, later tonight, there'll be a few more. We got to talk about the Knicks, obviously. We got to talk a little bit about the Clippers. We got to talk about the Sixers, Lakers. There's plenty of stuff to chat about. But the biggest deal, in many stadiums at least, has been a full-scale or closer to full-scale return of the fan.
Wow. All
Fan
kinds of
back.
fans. Yeah. Fans wearing Derek Jeter respect hats, fans with their lunch pails, fans who have their bootstraps pulled up, all the fans. The trifecta.
Before we get into some of the specific media stories regarding players and fans, what was your reaction to seeing a building full of people in New York, unmasked, just over the last year, we have not seen that sight occurring in the United States at all. And here it is in New York, watching the Knicks with a roaring crowd of people.
My reaction, I think it's a little scary, a little bit of relief. I'm glad the Knicks had a great moment yesterday. It felt like, I was texting you, it felt like a true New York moment. It was awesome. It felt like Linsanity, LJ. It was just very wonderful to see all those people together celebrating the same thing. But kind of like, I don't know, I'm 80% there with life being back to normal. I don't think this virus works based off of our feelings and what we decide. But I also am not an alarmist and think that I trust science and scientists. So if they tell us this is all good, it was a cool, joyous moment.
Yeah, the garden was absolutely rocking.
Rocking. It was sick.
I mean, the volume of the chanting was so noticeable in comparison to like the horse shit piped in audio that we became accustomed to in the bubble and earlier this season when capacity was much lower. In some ways, I'd kind of gotten used to those games and liked not having the fans to an extent. I know that sounds odd, but I felt that there was more focus by the cameras on the players, more interactions between them were captured. And my major takeaway was how much these guys are talking to each other and kind of smiling and laughing. And I don't think we'd seen that to the extent because they were always cutting to fans or there were just other distractions that were cutting into the announcers even more. At this point, I just felt like the cameras lingered a little bit longer and we saw how NBA players, how much they really enjoy the game and how much they kind of enjoy talking with opponents, even like in a friendly standpoint, on a shit talking standpoint. There's just so much more dialogue than you're accustomed to. And it just felt like pickup ball, except that these guys are the best on the planet. Just the way they interacted, I loved it. But I gotta say, seeing the garden just churning, roiling, it was really awesome to see.
It was awesome. And like to backstep like a few sentences before, yeah, imagine going to work and having to deal with racism every day and then finally going to work and be like, I don't have to deal with racism. And I'm definitely talking about Kyrie Irving and his statements about Boston. Like these fans have to play the refs, the opponents, their teammates, and the crowd. And they take a lot of what the crowd does to heart, because when some screaming white guy tells you to fuck off and flips you the double bird and you're an African-American man, it is horrible feeling and horrible looking and all these things. And I think we were lucky to have a break from that, and it has returned in full force.
I think you touched on something that is important, and it's that the average person doesn't get screamed at and told they suck by random strangers. And this has been part of their lives for a long time. You know, most of these guys have been superstars since they were 15 years old, 16 years old, 17. They've been targeted in good and bad ways as a basketball phenom and future pro in many cases since they were probably 12 years old. And that idea of going into an arena and everyone's screaming and saying you suck, I think for some guys it's fun. For some guys that energy gets them going. But there have to be some people who just don't like it. They don't like some schmuck they've never heard of saying, hey, fuck off, with a beer in their hand. Like, who the hell are you? What do you bring to this equation? Yes, I know you paid for your ticket, but like, go away. Yeah. I just don't want to hear your mouth. And I could totally see another group of players seeing hostile stadiums and maybe even their own fans in a context that's very different from, oh, it makes me inspired. It makes me go out there and play harder. Like, I love the energy. I think it can go both ways.
Yeah, I love Trae Young. I think he is, not to get too hyperbolic, he's a gift to the NBA because he's willing to be a villain, right? And when he silenced the Knicks audience, fans, on game one, he did like the ice tray rub. So cool. Atlanta Burr, amazing kind of like wink to context. And I really enjoy when he or players like him embrace that role. But I don't expect it from everyone because it's like a heartbreaker. Imagine being Russell Westbrook and being tenacious, but not being a great shooter. But like Russell Westbrook does everything we ask, all the grill masters ask him to do, right? He plays hard. He hates to lose. He works harder than anyone else there. He cares a lot. He doesn't joke around. He just doesn't shoot well. He's one of the greatest 50 players of all time. And to see a bucket of popcorn put on his head, I don't even think it's the Philly fans in its entirety, but it's like, I got kind of sad and angry. I'm like, don't do that to our guy. Like, come on. Russell Westbrook is the NBA. Like, don't throw shit at him.
Also, the guy was coming off the court after spraining his ankle, and you saw most of the Sixers, including Joel Embiid, who he famously does not get along with, kind of came by and tapped him on the shoulder or the back.
Yeah.
Most of the fans, I think, were applauding, and then someone just dumped a bag of popcorn on his head, in which case he kind of tried to fight his way back out.
I don't blame him.
No, not at all. And I know there's a side of this equation that says, it's just popcorn, man. That's not going to hurt anybody.
Oh, fuck that. Get out of here.
But that's not the point.
Yeah.
Like
so disrespectful.
A bag of urine wouldn't hurt you either. You're not going to die because someone pours urine on your head.
Yeah.
But, that's still unacceptable.
So disrespectful.
You can do whatever to someone as long as they aren't physically hurt. Like, what are you talking about? If a fan yelled the N-word at him, that's not going to physically hurt him either. Like, he dumped a bag of popcorn on the guy's head. It's rude. It's lame. And he's very fortunate that Westbrook couldn't get up there and beat the shit out of him.
Or have a conversation with him about the idea of respect of your fellow human being as your neighbor on Earth. And there's a lot of discussion about the malice at the palace, rightfully, because we've kind of like shifted our context of that. At first, it was so annoying to see the conversation be about culture, right? It's like, has the NBA gone too far? These thugs are going into the crowd. And I always thought it was funny that we don't know the person's name who threw the cup, but we know Ron Artest, and we know Steven Jackson, and we know Jermaine O'Neal. What was the guy's name who squared up to Jermaine O'Neal, whose life was saved by a wet spot on the court, right? Like, what's his name? What is he doing there? And I'm glad we talk about the Malice in the Palace now with clearer eyes and being like, yo, don't disrespect someone like that. We're all inhabiting the same space. Like, you have to deal with the consequences if you're going to do that. And all those fans are lucky that Ron Artest didn't end them right there, The
discussions about the Malice in the Palace are pretty complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Because, to me, that was justice in the palace.
Right.
Just to me.
Yeah.
And I've voiced that opinion. And, there's a guy I know was like, black guy, and said, like, yeah, but I think that was negative, though, because it made, presented black athletes in a bad light. And everyone saw them in the stands fighting with people.
It's a horrible optic. Yeah.
I was like, I get that perspective. But also, I just view it as, like, there can't be no consequences. You can't just do shit to players. You can't just do shit to construction workers. You can't just do shit to teachers. You can't just do shit to people and say, well, I'm a customer, so there are no ramifications. Like, I'm at McDonald's. You know what? I don't want my Coke. I'm just going to throw it in your face, cashier. Well, if the cashier decides to do something about it, game on.
The customer is rarely right. The customer's sometimes right.
The customer is never right.
Sometimes. Remember when Antonio Davis went into the crowd because he thought someone was talking shit to his wife? I think he was a Knick at the time. And it was such an odd optic because it was after the Malice at the Palace, obviously. And he just went straight up there. And everyone knew what was going on, even the announcers being like, there's some commotion. That's Antonio Davis's wife. And there's Antonio Davis. And he is a center. He's very tall. And he went up there calmly, being like, is everything okay here? And he looked like a giant among men, for sure, But that time we were already shifting, being like, who is causing him to do this? And I just think we got that wrong at the time. And we were still the Malice at the Palace. And I agree with you. It is more justice at the Palace. But it was a calamity that was interesting to talk about, but it was awful. And
well, you can see how the NBA viewed it. They may have said things about, well, we're going to ban these fans from the game. We got to protect our players. But the consequences for the guys who were involved in it made it clear that the NBA's real message that it wanted to convey was these guys aren't coming back in the stands. It wasn't, don't yell at them. Be nice to them. Be respectful, or they might come and see you. It was, they won't come back. You're not going to have fans up in the stands again, because we're going to put our test out for the year. We're going to put these guys with, just outrageous suspensions. And then the next year you have Carmelo fighting in the Garden as a member of the Denver Nuggets. And he gets like a 17-game suspension for throwing one punch. I mean,
backpedaled so fast.
But you just can't compare the length of those suspensions, not only to sports like baseball or football or hockey, but even to how basketball was, a few years prior. So we know what the league's response was from a optics standpoint was, we can't let these white fans who are buying our tickets for a lot of money be scared of the players.
And I think we've learned our lesson. I think the NBA has learned a little bit from that, because I agree. What's always lost with the Malice at the Palace is the Pacers kind of were championship contenders. Like, that team was fucking excellent, right? Like,
they were great. They had just dismantled the Pistons, who were the defending champions, I believe.
And like, I get too wistful, but I hate to see teams get eliminated because these guys don't have many chances. And they took a chance away from Reggie Miller, Ron Artest, who eventually wins one.
I was
Steven
about
Jackson.
to say, wasn't that the year after the Pistons had eliminated the Pacers with a Tyshawn chase down block and Reggie Miller?
Oh man, was it? I mean, that was a great rivalry.
I mean, those two teams were two of the best in basketball. Indiana was completely a contender that season.
The NBA took the window away.
They haven't been since.
Yeah, they took Jermaine O'Neal's window away. And I know, like, he probably doesn't win one statistically or probability-wise, gambling-wise, but, like, these guys will never know. And they have to live their whole lives being like, we could have won one, and my life would have been different. I think they've all done great for themselves. Those are all kings, Artest is like a mental health king. Steven Jackson is an activist who has a hit podcast. Jermaine O'Neal pops up every now and then. Reggie Miller's a star. So all those guys end up well, but like the last guy on the bench is like, could we have won a championship? It sucks.
In the year before Malice in the Palace, they were 61-21 with
that's
Carlisle
good.
coaching.
That's
and they
good.
lost to the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. And then they came back that next season. Ron
Artest was a beast.
They had all those suspensions.
Yeah.
And the season was just not the same. I mean, Meta World Peace only played 7 games for them that year.
He was still Artest at the time, right? I think so. He turned into Meta World Peace in L.A. and then eventually made his mark and will enter the Hall of Fame as a Knick. Not many people know this, but he was an all-star that prior year in Indiana. I mean, not to get too,
and they lost him for the season.
Not to get too dorky, he was a top 10 fantasy player. Like, you took Ron Artest like at the turn of the first round.
Queensbridge King.
Mob Deep, QBC. But yeah, and like, so, I think we're right to always bring up the Malice at the Palace because we did that wrong as, I think, fan base and media adjacent kind of audience. And so, we had 2 incidences this week, maybe yesterday, the popcorn on Russ, which kind of sucks. And then someone spit on Trae Young at the Garden.
Which is insane.
It's insanity. I'm just like, fuck you guys. I mean, it's not you guys, it's one person, right? But like, out of here with this behavior, man. Like,
I mean, that's just outrageous. Just outrageous.
I mean,
and it feels so shitty and antithetical to the energy in the Garden, which was hostile towards Young, and people were chanting about his baldness or fuck Trae Young or whatever. That's all good fun. And then to spit on him, like you could not be more lame. It's just so lame.
Like Cornerstone homie John Cohen texted me a picture of a piece of a printout being like, this is our chant. Trae Young is bald because he's going bald. And Breen and Frazier last night, talk about whist. It was like a beautiful call of that fourth quarter comeback. They were just so on point and excited. It was like a pleasure to listen to these guys just fucking do their thing. It was amazing. And Breen talked about the chants. He was like, dudes, we're better than this. Like, we didn't come all the way here to be in the Garden together winning a playoff game for this lame-ass chant. Like, these fans, you're not this. And I thought it was cool that he did that.
Yeah, I thought that was lame. It felt like the internet impeding on real life.
Yeah. Right.
Like someone thought this was clever and then printed it out. It was just, it felt so lame. But, I thought Trae Young made himself a perfect villain that New York wants, and then New York didn't know what to do with it. Like, you're out of practice. You just can't act right.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is doing exactly what you wanted. He beat you. He's telling you to shut the fuck up. It's quiet in here. And then you win against him the next game, which is what you have to do, this back and forth of struggle. And you're chanting about his baldness and spitting on him. Like, you did this wrong. He did it right. You did it wrong.
Yep. And him taking defeat, nodding, being like, I'll see you game 3. Like, this is what we want, right? Like, he is a Knick. We want him as a Knick. He's awesome. De Blasio being like, start playing the right way. I'm like, oh, he is. Like, stop hunting for fouls. I'm like, nah, that's greatness right there.
But also, he was supposed to be what he was. I tweeted that thing about de Blasio. I was like, this is the end of de Blasio's reign as the most hated man in New York, because there's no way people will not lose their shit on Trae Young. He is annoying. He is really annoying when he's
been
playing
booed everywhere in his career.
And he's really good.
Yeah.
Like, New York is going to delight in hating this guy. And it's been perfect.
Yeah.
And you saw, even after the last game, he was kind of grinning a little bit when people were giving him hell. And then when he walked off, you could tell he felt salty. And he was like, see you in the A. See you in the A. Throwing up an A for Atlanta.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You want a guy who revels in these moments and takes it personal.
When Reggie Miller killed the Knicks and did the choking gesture, we can look back and be like, that's a wonderful act of theater, right? Like, that was a great performance. And we can kind of laugh about it, but Knicks fans are still up in their feelings. I'm like, this is what makes it great, in my opinion. Like, you 100%. Should be passionate about this.
100%.
Disrespectful, fun.
And to spit at him and the ball jokes, lame. You're supposed to be cool. You're supposed to be the best basketball fans.
I mean,
supposedly.
I'll go on record and say I think Knicks fans are some of the worst in all of basketball, but I don't know, because I'm a Knicks fan and I'm in there. I'm not better than the normal Knicks fan, normie Knicks fans. I get up in my feelings, but like, I don't know, like, enough with this like hard work ethics kind of stuff. Enough of this like Garden defender mentality. Like, I don't know, after all we went through for a year, and I know I'm soft, but like, enjoy the theater and take part in it, but don't be like a dickhead about it.
That to me is what's whack about the spitting in particular. It's like, this is a special moment. This is special. Like, the nature is healing. You're back in the Garden. You're watching basketball. You gotta spit on someone? Like, you're a fucking loser.
Yeah, I thought it was weak, man. And ESPN has been talking about all these all these times fans have like confronted Russell Westbrook quite a bit, and we love Russ here, and he is doing a thing. And if you can't see that, like, there's no use in getting mad at Skip Bayless. He's doing a thing, right?
I would also say that since Malice in the Palace, there has been an upheaval in the way that we talk about players. And we might have said, well, I'm glad these guys went into the audience. I'm glad they did. But we didn't have social media in that era. Maybe there was message boards or Maybe. I guess there were. But there was no social media where the temperature can change and you see it change and you know it's changed. We might have been hearing about the Malice in the Palace back then and thinking something differently. But today, the Malice in the Palace would not be interpreted in the way that it was.
Absolutely, right. And I agree with you when you said earlier, like, Twitter has kind of informed the way these fans behave. Like, it's not like I'm a paying customer. It's just like my voice matters. And, I'm kind of down on Twitter these days. I think it's rebuilding. I love it, but I don't think it's
kind of like
in
the
a
Boston
good place.
Celtics of social media platforms.
Yeah, it's in a 10-year rebuild, maybe 11, 12, 13, however, whenever you want to start it. But I think Twitter's in a place I don't quite love right now. It's not as funny as I want it to be. People are kind of know the script of like dragging certain people. And I think that kind of influences the way fans at the Garden or fans at Wells Fargo act. And, we've been talking about all these in-arena incidents, but dragging Kevin Durant incessantly affects Kevin Durant. Dragging Ben Simmons nonstop is like foul behavior. Like, I enjoy criticizing players, no doubt. Like, that's what we're doing. It's like weak sauce, whatever. But to the point they go at Ben Simmons' family, and like it gets personal. And
we've never seen this before, and I think it is leading to a level of hostility from athletes towards fans that we've never seen. and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, Katie's right here, right?
Fuck yes. Ben Simmons is right. They're all right.
Yeah.
They're all right. I mean, players are now openly scornful of fans in a way that they never have been. Mm-hmm. They'll say, oh yeah, I love the fans. I love playing in front of them. Those are cliches.
Yeah.
When they're like, what about the fans who said this? Like, fans don't know anything about basketball. They're a bunch of casuals. Go away. I don't listen to them. Yeah. Like, we've never heard that in the past.
Yeah.
Every now and then, sure, like someone like Barkley might have said something, but this is like coming from everybody now.
Yeah.
Whether it's Draymond or Ben or Katie, like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I do this for a living on the highest possible level. I sit there and film all day. I just think about this. I'm coached. We have, like, this controls my life on a level where it's generationally going to take care of my children's children.
Yeah.
Like, this is everything that I have.
Yeah.
Is this sport. And you're sitting there being like, you suck.
Yeah.
Like, leave me alone.
And,
but sorry, just the last point was, there's always been rude fans at games. There's always been people who tossed batteries. There's always been people who yelled offensive stuff, held up shitty
Hank
signs,
Aaron,
whatever.
Yeah.
It's always been there, right? But I think the social media element is that it's 24/7.
Yeah.
If Ben Simmons or KD post anything, the comments are just going to be a wave of people saying, shoot a jump shot, who's going to win Rookie of the Year? Or with KD, is this your burner account? Like, it's all the time. They can't interact in the same way that all of us use social media without basically just an avalanche of garbage.
And, like, I love social media, and it's a great equalizer, and you can, like, at Kevin Durant, and he might respond to you, and that's just incredible. And we were talking about it last week, and I felt kind of like embarrassed because we're talking to our guest Jonah Weiner, and how I thought Blackbird spy plane was what a wonderful use of the internet. And it's like, I want this thing to increase the joy we have in our lives, and that's simple. It could be a blog about like fits, it could be an athlete reaching out. And when it turns bad, I'm like, we're using it bad. Like, remember, your life doesn't have to be shitty, and you don't have to inhabit a place of anger. And there's AM radio. I know there's AM radio, and people have been dragging, like, players for a long time for personal reasons. But, like, you're right. It's 24 hours. It's highly visible, and more people are doing it than ever. And now the athlete can talk back. So we have that interaction that maybe wasn't what I was hoping for, but it's turning into a confrontational thing that, like, it could be something or could not. Like,
I mean, it's wild just to see Doc Rivers and Ben Simmons openly insulting Sixers fans on a regular basis.
What's wrong with Sixers fans, man? What's going on with you guys? I'm putting you in there. But I know you're not like that. But like, yo, you guys might win a championship. And if you don't win a championship, it's not like because you weren't good enough or you didn't try hard enough. It's because the Nets are insane.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite is the person who screeches idiocy for 3 days about how Ben Simmons missed a couple foul shots in game one.
He had a good game.
He had 15 rebounds and 15 assists.
We love assists here, so that's worth like 40 points to me.
I mean, it was
42.
It was literally 42 points generated off assists.
Score 40 points or 15 dimes.
He had a fantastic game. He bricked some free throws and he didn't score well. He was otherwise incredible.
Yeah.
I think you could make a good argument that he was the best player on either team, despite being so shitty from the floor.
Yeah.
But besides that point, you have this group of fans who just pissed their pants for 2 days in a row. Then he goes out and has a good game, and they said, "See, just like I wanted him to do."
We motivated him
I
to
take
be
credit
good.
for that. That was
Right.
me. I'm like, excuse me?
They're gaslighting nothing. It's like gaslighting the air. A part of me is like, oh, this is an interesting fan, like kind of debate and wrinkle. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of gross when Simmons is dominating and you're still like talking shit about his sister. Like that's, I don't
get it. I don't get it. I mean, the revulsion for him is.
And we've talked about it. Why?
I was about to say, we've talked about this at length.
Yeah.
It's fairly unique, but it also goes for so many players. It goes for everyone.
Porzingis, Carmelo went through this in New York. Like, Knicks fans getting all high and mighty before the spitting footage came out, being like, Sixers fans are the worst. I'm like, you guys hated Steph Marbury. You broke Steph Marbury. And, like, that, in that documentary, you could see him losing his mind in New York and people just, like, throwing dirt on him. New York fans are not awesome. I mean, not all fans, right? But, yo, it's a bunch of Derek Jeter worshipping dudes chanting outside the Garden before they get their gabagoole threes.
Before we leave here, are there any of the series you want to discuss? Like, do you want to get into some of the nitty gritty of Knicks versus the Hawks? Do you want to talk about Clippers Mavs? That could be kind of fun.
Yo, the Clippers are so good. They're not choking. Luka's going off. There is nothing culturally wrong with the Clippers. They just lost 2 games. The team is sick. I don't know. I mean, I love hating on teams, don't get me wrong. But the Clippers always lose. Have been recently always losing in high-profile games in the playoffs. Like, they're good, man.
I think the idea that the Clippers are losing because of culture, because of chokers, none of that makes any sense to me. None of it does. I look at the first 2 games and I see a Mavericks team that's gone.
They got hot.
35 of 70.
Yeah.
Shooting 50% from 3 and shooting 54% overall from the floor.
Tim Hardaway Jr., man.
They have an offensive rating of 131.
Yeah.
That's not a team that you could beat. It doesn't matter who's playing against them. Mm-hmm. You can't beat a team that shoots 50% from 3.
Yeah.
You can't do it. It's not mathematically possible
Yeah.
to beat a team, a good team that's shooting 54% from the floor and 50% from 3 and has an offensive rating of 131. You can't beat them.
Hey, listen, if someone has a gun, you just need someone else with a bigger gun.
I mean, I don't even think, I think the Clippers have shot fairly poorly, but not even excruciating bad. They're shooting 33% from 3. Below average. Not great.
Yeah.
They're kind of cold. The Mavs are shooting 50%, man.
They ran into the wrong team at the wrong time, man. I think the Lakers probably lose twice against this Mavs team. We'll see. I don't know. Like, the Clippers could easily win one next game, and then we reframe the discussion, right?
Well, so the interesting question here is, and I'm just going to present you with a mathematical conundrum because you love math. If they've shot 50% from 3, the Dallas Mavericks, that is, over the first 2 games of the series. What do you think they'll shoot over the remainder of the series?
Is this a regression to the mean question?
Well, right. The question here is, there's no answer that we can figure out. Will they have a couple bad games, which get them back to average? Will it just be their average with these games? Or are they hot right now and will continue to shoot well and end up shooting better than average over their next 3-5 games, whatever it is?
And this is what's so annoying. This is why people hate Nate Silver to death, right? Because in my opinion, the correct answer is it depends on what your sample size is, and we don't know. But there's a probability of them shooting worse, and there's a probability of them shooting the same. And there's a small probability they shoot even better. It's like, but that's not a real answer. And it's like, well, the context is what matters. Throughout their playoffs, throughout their season, or throughout this playoffs. What would surprise us the least is if they took a slight dip. If they shot the same, I'd be more surprised than if they shot a little poorer, right?
Right. I mean, if you gunned to my head and you said, what do you think they will shoot from the floor, not including these 2 games, but for the duration of the series after this, I would say 36%.
Sounds reasonable. Yeah.
That's what they did on average this season.
Yeah.
But
teams that get hot, man.
I was going to say, maybe you could go back in and say, yes, but over the second half of the season, they shot this. And they've shot this for the last 3 weeks. And you're like, oh, well, that's partly the personnel. That's individual strong performances and lineups that are generating threes at a high level and better looks. That's what makes basketball so fun, though. There are all these, all these tumblers that are just sort of jiggling into place, and we have no good answer.
I don't hate. I kind of sell on postseason statistics because, like you said, it's personnel, but the opposition too. The opposition's personnel. And Pat Beverly has not had a good 2 games, and they must, Luka just may see the Clippers and be like, I enjoy this matchup.
Totally. And I think that's what makes narratives such as Paul George is a choker, Kawhi is a choker, and Doncic rules are much easier to embrace because you don't have a whole bunch of unknowable variables and you don't have to sound like a freaking Nate Silver discussing them. You can avoid the mantle of nerddom and just say, Paul George is a bitch. Kawhi's okay. He did win a championship or 2.
Yeah.
But Doncic rules.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, see, this guy gets it.
Yeah, right. Yo, Paul George went off in game 2. He had
Look, Poindexter.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about that 50% from 3, all that jazz.
Yeah.
Paul George is a biatch.
Yeah, man. I think the Clips going down 0-2 is fascinating because I think they're a better team than Dallas. But what's going on with Phoenix versus LA, man? Because LA looks more like last season's LA than this season's LA.
I could not be more bummed about Chris Paul's shoulder.
It's frustrating.
I don't know if a couple days off will get it back to normal. I don't know the severity of the injury. Maybe no one does. But to see him on the sideline in a tight, fantastic game 2, bummer.
Yeah, man.
He's gotten so unlucky in the playoffs when he's been on really good teams that had a chance to win a title. And it's that one thing that eludes him in his resume. I really do believe he's the best point guard who's ever lived, and he just does not have the hardware to show for it.
Or the wins. Yeah,
he hasn't been there. He hasn't been in the finals. He hasn't had that chance. I think he's only been to the conference finals once or twice. But he just doesn't have that resume to back up how good I think he is and what he deserves a claim for, which is just being the perfect point guard, just like we make perfect pods.
It's true. One perfect season more perfect than the last. But I think he kind of gets a pass at this point because not only do the media fucking love him, he's protected by NBA royalty, right? His dude is the best player of all time. And I think his associations and the stories around him kind of save him from the fate he was about to suffer maybe 5 years ago where he couldn't get enough wins, in the playoffs. I think And I may be mistaken. I think we all understand how great he is.
I think you're right, and this is kind of almost goes back to that idea of the malice in the palace and how primitive the way that things were discussed back then is. And at least now, even with there being elements of fandom that we find irksome and gross, the conversations have just gotten so much smarter.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Tracy McGrady, he's a choker.
No.
He's a loser. Now, no players even have that title really anymore. Chris Paul used to and doesn't, and he didn't really win.
No.
But no one really calls Chris Paul a choker or a loser anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone's just kind of accepted that he's great at basketball and got a raw deal. Not to say this is universal, but I would say the prevailing sentiment has shifted away from the idea of branding guys as being losers, of being lame, of not coming up with big wins, of not wanting it enough. And that plagued people like Chris Webber for their whole career. Mm-hmm. And I could be wrong, but I don't think of anyone right now who's a star that people say, oh, he doesn't want it enough, with the obvious caveat that Ben Simmons gets that kind of nonsense.
What about Playoff P?
He's kind of the only one right now, right?
People hate him.
You're right. No, that's a good call. And it's not even particularly justified.
He's awesome. He's so good. He's
The
blowing
weirdest
up.
thing about him was, if you just reversed his career and you put these lousy seasons in the past, and then you put, or lousier, because he's been fine in a lot of the playoffs, and swapped out his Pacers ones, where he was a monster, recently, we'd be like, playoff P, that's a real thing.
right. Yeah.
And Kyle Lowry was the other way around. Kyle Lowry started out being an absolute bricklayer for most of his career in the postseason, and then comes up with a title, plays well, and is suddenly like, that guy's a lion-hearted hero. Same with Dirk. It's funny. It's just
Jimmy Butler, too. Jimmy Butler was reviled until he turned into the most blue-collar player of all time.
It just depends on when shit happens.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, when this shit happens, we record the perfect pod.
Yeah, and maybe in the future we'll divulge who the other two gabagooles really are.
We have to keep... Well, you have to keep me on my toes, because I don't know who the ranked number 1 and number 2 gabagooles are. We know the third.
That will be revealed during the finale of Mare of Easttown next week on Cookies Hoops.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.